Hey, this is the old gaming geezer. Welcome along to the Indeterminate Stuff, part 16. Now, I have coming up very shortly an Eve window. It's probably about maybe 10, 15 days away. And I do not feel confident enough to send a manned mission to Eve. So therefore, I built this, a probe that I'm going to send to Eve, and I'm going to launch it on this, I'm launching it on this slightly overpowered launcher, but you know, hey, it's a slightly overpowered launcher. I like overpowered launchers. They're pretty. So I just dumped my liquid fuel boosters. I put liquid fuel boosters on it because that's the way I roll, buddy. Yeah! Woo! And I got back a little bit of funding from doing that, and now we're in orbit, and I'm about to do my circularization burn. So we're burning to get into an orbit, and then we're going to wait here for a couple of weeks, and then we're going to burn out to Eve. Now, what is on this thing? Well, there is the usual sciencey stuff. I'm going to try and transmit back as much science as I can, science as I can, which unfortunately is not going to be not very much. But I'm also sending a kethane probe. I'm just quickly checking to see where Eve is. It's a long way away. But, you know, we'll be going soon. We have a lot of fuel left in our launch stage, so that's going to give us a bit of a kick out of Kerbin orbit. And there we are, checking out, doing a quick test run on the kethane scanner. Everything seems to be working fine, although we're not scanning any kethane. We are scanning. Scanning is underway. What's also underway is the acquisition of cash, because I've got something planned. I'm going to need a lot of money for it, so I need to do some contracts. And here's a simple contract of putting a satellite in a very specific orbit around Kerbin. Now, I decided to do something I've never done before here, and that is to use fairings. Look at that. This is inside that is the satellite, and it's going to pop out. Now, the fairings are from the KW rocketry pack, and they take a little bit of figuring out how to make them work. But once you make them work, you've got this cool fairing to surround your ship. Now, I don't actually need to do this because of the aerodynamic system in the game. It doesn't really matter if you're aerodynamic or not. Now, if I was using something like FAR or NEAR, I would probably need to use these. But actually, I would definitely need to use these a lot more. But there we go. We just jettisoned the fairing. Isn't that cool? Love it. I love it. So that's the first time I've ever used the fairings. It's great. And so now I am deploying my solar panels, and I am just making sure I get myself into orbit with a little poodle engine there on the back of that large fuel tank. I'm going to dump the fuel tank soon, and the fuel tank and the fairing mount. The fairing mount is a very important part of the KW rocketry fairings. There are other fairing systems out there, like there's the procedural fairings, which I've never used. I think B9 Aerospace has fairings as well. Not too sure about that. Now, there is the orbit I need to get into, the green thing with the spinny circle thingies going around. Thingy, that's a technical term. Now, when I looked at that, I noticed that there seemed to be orbit direction indicators on that, which I hadn't actually noticed before I launched. So at this point, I suspect that because I launched into a prograde orbit, as I always do, I think that might be wrong. I think my orbit has to be retrograde, opposite to the spin of the planet. And so I get myself into the orbit, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, but I haven't completed the contract. So I think that I have failed. Now, I probably don't have enough fuel to spin this orbit around. It would take a buttload of fuel. So I'm going to have to launch again. But what am I going to do with this ship? I've got this satellite in orbit. It actually has a kethane scanner on it. So I figure, why don't I put it into an inclined orbit and maybe do some scanning for kethane? So I set up a maneuver node and get my ship into position and just start burning to get it. I'm not going into a full polar orbit because I don't have enough fuel, but I can get a fairly inclined orbit, and then I can cover much more of the planet than I normally would if I was just scanning equatorially, because I'll be orbiting at a highly inclined angle, and as I'll be going around the planet, as the planet spins around below me, I will basically scan much more of the surface as I go around. I used the same method when I was scanning the Mun and Minmus for Kethane quite a long time ago. I think that was episode 4, maybe. I don't recall. I've got a terrible memory. And so here we are now. We've got into a fairly inclined orbit, and we're going to scan away and scan for Kethane. So this failed launch has now turned into a Kethane scanning expedition. So it's now a Kethane probe. Yes! Not a contract probe, I swear. So we need to actually do the proper mission now. We need to send this thing up, put it into a retrograde orbit, and get it to do its thing, and we will get money, because money is what we need. We want the cash. So we're setting up this again. This is pretty much exactly the same ship, exactly the same launch profile, except we're launching retrograde. So our gravity turn is to the west. Was that right? It's the west, yeah, not to the east. So we're taking off in the opposite direction that Kerbin is spinning. So we're going into a retrograde orbit. And now we have dropped our launch stage. At any second now, we're going to drop our beautiful KW rocketry fairings. I may start using these more often because I really think they're really cool. They're very, very, very cool. So we're up out of the atmosphere, so I figure it's time to dump the fairings. And there they go. Awesome. I love it, love it. Excellent. All right, so now we burn up. We need to get into a 400 kilometer orbit. So which is usual, burning up to 400 kilometer orbit. When we get there, we just do a little bit of burn to get us right into the proper place, and we're scanning for Kethane. As I said, it's the exact same ship. Probably don't need a second Kethane scanner on Kerbin, but I've got one. So hey, so we do it. We're in orbit. We've got the contract. I just need to shut down for 10 seconds all inputs, like no SAS and everything, and then it gives me the final bit of the contract. And success! We have some cash, and we are ready for the next part. Spending said money. And spend we shall. What you're seeing wobbling like crazy on the launch pad there is what we're spending our money on. This is a large, large ship that's going a long, long way. I've given it a temporary name, but I'm gonna have to go up with a proper name for it. And what this ship is it's going to go out to Jool, and it's going to take with it a couple of landers. I'm probably actually going to launch a second one and send 2. It's not really a grand tour because, well, I can't. I'm not going to be able to launch a ship like this, which has enough Delta V to land on every moon of Jool. It's not going to happen. So I'm going to land this one on Lathe. Well, not this ship. I'm going to take up a lander to land on Lathe. Possibly 2. Because it needs to be balanced. As you can see, it's quite difficult to get this thing into orbit because it's wobbling so much. But it needs to be balanced, so I need to have 2 things on those booms, those docking booms on either side, that are around about the same mass, so that the ship will be balanced when it's going into orbit. When it's thrusting. So that's my next thing, is to get 2 landers up there. Now, one of the landers, the Lathe lander, I've already got designed and tested. That will be launching soon. And on the big green tank on the back of that, you can see a lot of docking ports. And those docking ports on the back are for docking extra fuel tanks. I'm going to put 4 drop tanks onto this thing. And so they will be the one on the back. Now, the main capsule on this is the coupler capsule. Behind that, we've got a HAB module, a hitchhiker capsule, as it's called. And behind that, we've got a science lab. So the science lab is going to be where all the science is taken care of. So I'm going to have to get the 2 boys back, Nelvis and Lemwell, from Minmus and the Moon, because they're my 2 top science dudes. So that will be what I'll be doing soon, is getting those boys back. But before we go and do that, let's dump our launch stage. There was a little bit of fuel left in it, but I need to do a little orbital maneuvering here. Get rid of those fairings on the nuclear engine. And, well, let's take a look at the ship. It's pretty awesome, I must say. As we look outside of the beautiful cockpit of this copula pod, it's watching Kerbin below, coming below us. Beautiful, wonderful. Now, I've got a problem with this ship, slight problem. It wobbles just a little bit. I don't really know what's causing it. Well, it's possibly the fact that it's just made of those struts, right? The struts and and metal trusses all down the middle of it, but it just wobbles just very slightly. Well, I figure we need to get somebody out and take a look at this. And so we have Kerbin, who's going to get out of the ship, and he is going to use his jetpack to RCS down past the habitation module, past the science lab, and then on the sides of the screen, on the left and the right, port and starboard of the ship, we can see our docking array, which has Clampotron Juniors and Clampotron Regulars. And now we're going past our main structure, which separates the ship from the drive section. Now, the drive section is separated out like that because I need to have some space for my landers without them banging into the drive section. Now, there's a lot of struts holding that together because it took me a long time to get this thing into orbit. So here we are coming down to our 3 nuclear engines, which are going to drive this thing out to Jool and hopefully back home again. I had to stack those in a very particular way so I could just launch them from Kerbin like that, but it seemed to work okay. I had to put one in the center on a big long truss and the 2 on the sides on shorter trusses so I could use a stack separator to a stack decoupler on the center engine, and then I truss the hell out of it as you usually do. So I'm going to attach 4 regular Rockamax tanks to those 4 docking ports you can see there. Well, you can only see 3 of them, and those will be drop tanks that we will drop as we use the fuel in them. That is my plan. Now we're coming back up past our docking ports again. And in the background, you can see our launch stage flying away, still in orbit. I might have to get rid of that at some point. I may send up a claw ship to bring it home. Who knows? Maybe, or maybe I'll just delete it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. So Kerbin is going to get back into the ship. And then we got to wait for the supply run to bring up some fuel to fuel up this ship and get it ready to go. We also need to get our landers up here too. But before we do all that, we have to build a Minmus base. We have to build a Minmus base because we've got a contract to build a base on Minmus, and we've got to have space for at least 12 Kerbals. We need to have docking ports. We need to have comm systems. So what you're seeing here is me testing some of my ideas for the Minmus base. So I've got these 2. This is an early design. The final one was slightly different. This was the testing phase. As I see, can I put a couple of different pieces down on the ground and dock them? And it looks like I can. So that's excellent. And so we do a little test of our landing gear. All looks good. I've got those little aircraft engines, and it's going to quickly test the engines. See, when I lift it up, it lifts up. Yeah. Those are actually the lander engines, and that's what's going to get me down onto the surface of Minmus. So I think it's be pretty easy to land. Taking off though, here we go. This is our launcher that's going to bring us up to Minmus. Very simple launch, nothing fancy. I've got solid rocket boosters, which I'm about to drop. And there they go. And this is a big rocket because my base is a little bit heavy, but I managed to get it up there with little or no problems. Doing quite a little gravity turn. We're now getting up into orbit. We're doing our orbital burn here. And any second now, I put a load of parachutes on the main launch vehicle because I thought I would drop it and get some cash back. But I had a good bit of fuel left by the time I got into orbit that I felt that, I should use that fuel to help me get out to Minmus because I was running quite a narrow margin fuel-wise on this trip. So I figured the best thing to do would be to use that launcher stage as a booster to get me out to Minmus. And so that is what I'm doing here. I fire the rockets. I only get a few seconds of thrust out of it, but it's enough to burst me up. And there it goes. We drop the stage and we turn on our Poodle engine and we get a nice burn out towards Minmus. And so we're looking good as the Kerbin drops away behind us. And around about this time, my alarm clock went off to tell me that it was time for the Eve X ship to burn out to Eve, to start its orbit to Eve. So I stopped recording and switched to it and forgot to start recording again when I burned. So I've already done the burn. My Eve ship is already out on its way to Eve here. It's moving. It's going. It's going to be quite a while before we get to Eve. It's going to be about 300 days. So back to the Minmus base. In the intervening time, I decided to name the base, and I thought I should call it Minmus Base Alfalfa. I think that's a pretty classy name. What do you think? I think so. So here's the Minmus Base Alfalfa, and I'm trying to get into a position where I get a nice, low, close approach around Eve. Now, if you hear anything behind me, that'll be my cat, which just ran into the room. What he's going to be doing, I do not know. And so here we are, we're getting a close approach, and there I'm setting maneuver node to circularize my orbit. So here we are coming into to Minmus now, and we are going to burn to circularize. I think that ship looks pretty nice. It's going to break up into... oh, there's my alarm telling me it's time to circularize. Yeah, this ship is going to break up into 2 pieces. They're going to land separately, and then they're going to roll towards each other and dock like we saw those 2 test pieces doing earlier on. Now, these 2 are not exactly the same, so hopefully it's going to work. But the height of the docking ports on them is actually is the same on each piece. But we'll see that. We'll see that soon. There's me getting into a circular orbit. And we're going to detach both of these pieces of the base, and we're going to land them on Kerbin. On Minmus. Next time we might bring up maybe a Kethane refinery and stick it onto it. Who knows? Maybe we'll do that. But all that's going to be in the next episode. It's late at night. The old gaming geezers needs his sleep. I will see you next time. Good night. Farewell. If you like this video, please hit like below. If you really like this video, hey, you might want to subscribe. Good night. Bye-bye.